Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Movie Minds Podcast. We are your hosts. I am Joe. This is Brandon.
Hello?
And this is Brad.
Good evening.
Today, we are going to be talking about Brandon's pick, the film Nefarious. All right. And he, because it is his pick, is going to give us a brief summary and his initial thoughts. And then we're going to dive into another discussion about it. You all know how this works. So, Brandon, go ahead and take it away, sir.
Yeah, so Nefarious. Other than Napoleon, I believe this is the most recent movie we've reviewed. 2023, 2022. Did not come out too long ago. The plot revolves around a man that is possessed by the devil. Well, one of the devils, sort of a demon, more or less, named Nefarious. Um, and the whole movie, up until the end, pretty much takes place in an interrogation room where the psychologist has to sign off on whether the criminal in question is fit to die. Basically, he received the death penalty for actions that the demon committed, right? Because he's a man possessed by a demon. And that's pretty much what takes place the entire film. You watch this interrogation from the psychologist with the prisoner, and that's pretty much what we see throughout the whole film. And he has back and forth between the criminal. His name escapes me. Brad, what's his name? The the
The criminal?
non-possessed man.
Edward
Yeah,
Wayne Brady.
Edward. Yeah, Edward Wayne Brady and Nefarious. And remember, Nefarious is living in his head, so sometimes the psychologist is talking to Edward, sometimes he's talking to Nefarious. And basically you see that one thing that resonated with me was early on in the film, Nefarious in Edward's body states to the psychologist that he by the end of their interrogation he would have killed three people. And sure enough, that's what ends up happening. We'll get into spoilers as we go on, but so that's what you're kind of like. You hear that earlier on, you're kind of thinking throughout, okay, well, who are the three people going to be? We see the first one or hear about the first one. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but what really resonated with me with that was past, present, future, right? The first person that died was in the past, ended up beating his mom. The present was an aborted baby, and that his girlfriend, not wife, girlfriend had, and the future being Edward by the end. So I think that's kind of the gist of the film, but then the end kind of like, and we'll get into it because I have my thoughts on the ending, but by the end of the movie, Edward does the psychologist ends up signing off saying that he's fit to receive the death penalty, electric chair, mind you, that Nefarious suggested. That's another thing throughout the film. Nefarious says all these terrible things that Edward wants done, and then he leaves Edward like as soon as the horrible things are happening. So in the movie, Edward gets put to death, and then Nefarious actually takes over the psychologist's mind because early on in the film, that's the deal that the psychologist made with the demon Nefarious. And even at the end of the movie, we see Edward die. Nefarious takes over the psychologist's mind, grabs a gun from a detective that's there, goes to shoot himself. Bullet doesn't go off. Now, mind you, the psychologist isn't doing any of that. It's Nefarious doing it. And to me, because I'm Catholic and I believe in angels, I believe in demons, I believe in God. And what I didn't like about that was even after this proof of seeing a higher power in a positive light, let's not even say God, let's just say a higher power that stopped something from happening. The psychologist still doesn't believe in God. He believes in the demons, but he doesn't believe in God, which to me, and I hope Brad touches into that to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense because you can't have one without the other. That's kind of what I perceive from that. And the movie kind of ends with the psychologist walking out of an interview with Glenn Beck. He's a political talk show host for our audience under the age of 18, which I'm pretty sure is our only audience, maybe. But actually, I've been surprised in the comments. There's a lot of adults that watch us too. But anyway, he's walking out, he encounters a homeless woman, and the homeless woman is actually Nefarious, who at this point has left the psychologist and I guess moved on to torment other people. So, in a nutshell, that is what Nefarious is about. We'll get into, I guess, more mind like our mind ratings and things like that. But that's how I'll start the discussion. So that's the plot. Thoughts?
Hmm. Brad, go ahead.
Okay. Well, where to begin? So
How
good,
was that
friend.
run through? Pretty good. Was that pretty
I
thorough?
rate your
Very
your run through as a
excellent summary.
4.5 out of 5 mines for your
Oh,
summary.
I,
Yeah.
I second that. Excellent review.
In
Excellent
fact,
summary.
let's
Very
just
good.
wrap it up right here. That's it. This is
Yeah. All right. See you guys
You
next
know,
week.
See ya.
this,
See.
uh,
No,
Guinness
a
Video
couple
record.
things, and then we kind of riff off each other here. I don't know where you want to go with this. I did
Mhm.
just a little look into the story itself. So this is based on a book called A Nefarious Plot by a political commentator named Stephen Deese. He works, or I believe he still works for Blaze Media, which is Glenn Beck's media. So that's why Glenn Beck is in there. And he's an American conservative. So that definitely comes through. Maybe I'll get to that. So a little bit about the film itself, Brandon. You touched on it. It mostly takes place in a form of an interrogation. So it is dialogue driven, a lot of dialogue. So if people are looking for like a stereotypical demonic or exorcism movie, this is not it. It's not scary per se. I mean, there's tension, there's dramatic tension built up, and I think it does a good job at that at points. But it's more, I think it's meant to be because you're using this. You have the psychiatrist and you have the criminal, and this is supposed to be an exploration into the human psyche. Before I get into any more of that, I will say the Edward Wayne Brady character, who Nefarious Edward Wayne Brady, is played by Sean Patrick Flannery. I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he did a very
Mm.
good job. I really liked that. The I had recognized him from, of course, from Boondock Saints was the other movie I remembered him from.
Oh yeah.
I know he's been in other films, but that's where I recognized him from. I thought he did exceptionally well. I like that character portrayal. If I can just go into a problem right off the bat for me, and then we'll see how you want to talk about this or not. So I thought he did very well. I just don't think there was not enough supporting cast to uphold his performance. I would have liked to seen somebody else, like especially in the doctor's role, that could kind of match his character intensity or something to play off of. So that was there. You want to stop there, or do you want to keep going, Joe? Joe, do you know what I mean? You know what I mean by that? Like,
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I feel I was kind of worried I might be sort of the bad guy this episode because I was kind of this one was kind of built up a lot for me. So it's like expectations meets what it is. Well, there was another thing I wanted to talk about too, but yeah, that was kind of one of the things. It's kind of like the one of the greatest strengths of the movie kind of parallels with I think one of its biggest weaknesses is I like the fact you guys both mentioned it's very dialogue driven. It's very conversational. Mostly takes place in one area, but and that performance though, I think that the performances, those two main ones, are probably the best thing about the movie, especially Sean Patrick Flannery. He does a good job of portraying somebody who's really going through something and switching back between those two characters. He does quite a good job with that, and it's pretty seamless. But I agree though, the psychologist actor, I think he wasn't bad, but he definitely wasn't on that level of acting. I thought he was a bit stilted,
mhm.
and honestly, everybody else in the movie, literally everybody else, was just a subpar actor, and it kind of showed. And that might have been budgetary limitations if it's independent film, and that's why they had kind of a limited location for most of it, which I can appreciate. I just don't know if there was enough within the context of that conversation to kind of carry the whole movie. There were like little. It's one of those things where I liked the concept of this so much, and the core of it was good in those performances, especially early on, like when they initially meet up. It's really got some good tension, but I think it kind of I thought it didn't quite stick the landing as much with some of the scenarios they were going through, and part of that I think is like you said, it's kind of the lack of supporting characters because we mentioned what happens with his mother, which was some drama, and the girlfriend, which was some drama, but we never see these characters. We don't even really hear them. So I almost kind of wish we had some brief interactions with them maybe before going into the prison so we have more connection to them and the psychologist character because he didn't really seem like a fully fleshed out character to me. So I felt like some of those beats they were going for were not as effective. So some of it was the performances, some of it was just a lack of presence of other characters. Like there was a good idea and they were strong, but I don't think it was strong enough to carry the whole conversation based film element, unfortunately. So that was kind of how I felt about that.
Yeah, so piggybacking off of that, I think more of a backstory would have been nice. Especially like he brings up a Ouija board. I want to know what Edward did because we had Father Zeta come and speak to us, and you have to invite a demon in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I want to know how that happened. First
Ooh,
off,
ooh, Brandon, may I interject
yeah,
briefly?
go ahead.
But before I lose the thought, that was something else that kind of bothered me about about that guy. Like in some ways, I kind of liked they were trying to show this balance of this skeptic guy doing this, but I think some of the things that he did were just kind of unrealistic and unprofessional and stupid. Like
To the
the fact that he kind of
psychiatrist.
yeah, the fact that he allowed, like he said, "Oh, I'm going to give you permission," whether or not he believed in the possession, like that was just bad. That was just a bad decision. So it's kind of like I know this is trying
Mm,
not to be a traditional horror movie, but that was just dumb. That's just not something you do. Giving somebody in that interrogative position the power. That's just he was acting very unprofessional, which I guess was his character. But some of it I thought was very much to move the plot forward.
yeah.
A little
Well,
artificial maybe.
I'll get into my thoughts on that doctor because I agree with everything you're saying. But first thing, there was three things I wanted to say. That was the first one, more of a backstory. Second, I agree with Brad completely. Phenomenal acting from the gentleman that played Nefarious and Edward. Awesome. Um, the third thing that I wanted to, and now it lost me. So it was the more of a backstory. Oh, and this will kind of go like I have a question and then like I think we'll create some discussion. Who would you say the protagonist between the psychiatrist and Edward is? Because then I have a follow up to that. So do you think this is more? Because that really sets up then how the movie's going to go. So do you think we should be focused more on Edward as the main focal point or the doctor? Like who's the main protagonist here? You know what I'm trying to say?
Well, I mean, Brad, I don't know if you agree with me here. I think that the psychiatrist is supposed to be our main character in the story. I think that Edward, unfortunately, is he's just kind of a platform for the antagonist character, more so. So the victim here isn't necessarily as much of a focus as maybe they should be, even though the performance is good. I think the psychiatrist is pretty clearly the main character, which is maybe one of the problems with the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's backwards then. When I watched it, I thought because then you have to have more backstory on the whoever the main protagonist is going to be. That's who you focus the backstory on. But
Hmm.
I if that's the case, then I think it would have been a better movie if the protagonist would have been Edward and the backstory there. Because that
You know,
psychiatrist, I sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Oh no, Brandon, I like what you're saying, and I know that once again, I feel like part of the problem is like the movie's trying to be experimental despite its limited budget, like in a more traditional, like thriller investigative thing. They would have
Mm.
scenes beforehand where okay, our psychiatrist character, we're going to learn a little bit about his family and his issues, and he's going to be investigating, going over records and files. Oh, okay, and then brief snippets. Oh, this when he did this when he was younger. We'd learn more about
Mm,
the subject, before and then during. They'd intercut. This wouldn't take place in a day, and that would be, I think, a narrative that would be allow it to flesh things out in a more traditional way, which yeah, the movie just doesn't do. So yeah,
Totally.
I agree with you there. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a
Um,
little if I could just add my thoughts in there.
yeah,
I think it's a little
Mhm.
it's kind of it's kind of backwards. Uh, it's called Nefarious, and then I don't know who to root for. I end up I end up, and as odd as it sounds, I end up almost wanting this demon to best this doctor because
The
Bingo.
unlikable
he's such a
doctor.
putz. He's so unlikable. Like
Yeah.
I want to see what's going to happen to him. I want to see this guy and the Edward
Yeah.
Brady. So the criminal, the human Edward Brady, he's pathetic. I mean, he that's a very pathetic character. I mean, in the best way. Like he does, like Sean
Yeah.
Patrick Flannery does a good job. Like I felt sorry for him at the end. I was like, oh man, he couldn't
Yes.
get the bacon double cheeseburger he wanted. Um,
Yeah.
but it's weird that way because I don't know who I'm supposed to be rooting for here. Like if I'm watching, I don't know, I'm just put something out there. If I'm watching The Exorcist, you know, I want the priest to prevail and out throw out the demon. If I'm watching Silence of the Lambs, you know, I want the FBI agent to eventually, you know,
Hmm.
beat Hannibal Lecter. I'm like, I want Nefarious to somehow, you know, put this guy in his place, and then maybe the other guy doesn't have to die. It
Hmm.
was it was tough, and I think because, like you said, Joe, no backstory. He's unlikable from the jump. The doctor, I go back to I think the performance by Flannery, by Sean Patrick Flannery. It just dominates. He dominates the scene there, and so maybe they could have done something else. Um, I don't know. Maybe they could have done something else there because, like you said, he's like subsuming him. I mean, it's you know,
He carries the movie.
yeah. I like to. I put a note down here. I think it would be an interesting concept because what ends up happening here, which is kind of ironic, is like you have a spirit, you have a demon. Suppose if we're gonna buy into this guy's a demon, so you don't know if he's crazy or demonic. I think by the end we're supposed to agree. Well, we'll talk about the end then. But you have a demon putting an atheist on trial, and it gets very
Hmm.
cosmic. It gets big picture, very cosmic, and I
Hmm.
think that's kind of cool. It goes from the very personal, like he knows all these things about Dr. Martin, and then he's like, well, what about God? What about this? And then it goes all the way back to the beginning of like literally creation, and then he reveals this long thing. I also, and then maybe we can talk about this, but I just want to talk about. I also I liked what was going on there when he started to get to the book part. You're gonna write my book and
Oh,
that kind of thing. I didn't
yeah.
like that. I'm like, what the what?
I'm gonna have you write my book.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't know. I didn't like that. I didn't like that. That's just me. So it was a
well,
little. It got a little like a little ham-fisted. It was like
that
anyway.
it got corny to a certain
Well,
point.
that's what I'm
Like,
saying. I liked it less as
went
it
on.
got toward the end. I started to not like certain aspects of it, and that was one of the things. The book thing, I'm like, oh,
Well,
you didn't have to do that.
no, I agree. It's like I kind of it's like I get that he's a demon, but I feel like he almost cares about these like it seems like these things that almost don't matter. They're so petty and silly. Like I'm yeah I'm going like he cares that much about writing the book. I don't know. It just I feel like I don't know. I'm not an expert on it, but I just feel like the demon would just want to mess with them, you know, and just kind of get that joy off of that. But unless it's, I guess he said he was high ranking, but yeah, something about him, the demon penning a manuscript.
I think it's
I don't know.
supposed to
Yeah,
be like this demon is. So again, this is a book, so they're basing it on the book. I don't know if there was sequels to the book.
I
So it
think there
seems
are.
like this demon wants this inverted gospel, this inverted Bible to come out as like a plan.
Hmm.
So that's okay. You can't
Yeah.
put that in this movie though. That's too big. You know what I mean? Like this is a round hole and you're sticking a cube.
Well, it you
And
know it would be a obviously a very different movie, and I think some other films have maybe done this once again, more traditional horror ones, where maybe there is like a really evil anti-gospel that someone finds or someone's searching for, and if they find it, they can use it to cause all these horrible things, and that's the focal point of your epic movie. And this is just kind of like, oh yeah, by the way, there's this little book out there. You're right. It seems like a big thing that's almost an afterthought, and then it comes off. I don't know. It comes off kind of stilted and almost random, actually, because he's doing so much in this conversation. It's like I don't know. It seems like it's just too much crammed into one scheme. I don't know.
I I had mentioned to Brad, I think, and I think I said something to Joe in the hall today. This was for me. This was probably the most emotionally invested movie we've watched so far. For
Hmm.
me, I think a lot of the reasons is because like A, find this stuff interesting. B, it got Father Zeta's approval, so that kind of made me like invested in the movie. But three,
Hmm.
I think whoever directed this and who wrote it did such a good job of making you dislike, like Brad kind of mentioned earlier. So I'm pretty much saying the same thing as Brad over again, but I want to get into the doctor because
Hmm.
I don't want to use hate because I mean it's just a movie. I
Hmm.
dislike that doctor so much, like Brad was saying, that you end up rooting for a demon. And that's kind of genius. You know what I mean? So I thought that was a positive thing. Like that
Brandon,
doctor was a
can
terrible.
I say
Go
something
ahead.
on that? Can I
Yeah.
say something on that? And I noticed this, and it is what it is because every story bears the mark of its creator somewhere. It's going to come through. So as I said, this was written by Stephen Deist. He's a conservative commentator. This doctor is a stereotypical like liberal in his book, and so he wants to bring that out. Like this guy voted for uh, Hillary Clinton, and then this guy and he really plays that, and you're obviously supposed to hate the doctor. That's why, like Joe, like he can't be the protagonist because he's a coward and he's rotten. I mean, he's just I don't like him, and it seems like it's written that way. Like you're not supposed to like him from the
That
beginning.
that's true, but I think I mean it's interesting though because I think that he's written in a way that he is almost kind of a stereotype though, not really a character. So he's designed to be hated too easily, and also as we mentioned though, if he's supposed to be our protagonist because he is the protagonist kind of, then he's kind of a weak one, and I think it's a problem if we're rooting more for the villain to win
Yeah.
in this story when we should be liking the hero because regardless of whether he's liberal or whatever, he should be a more fleshed out character who we can understand his perspectives. And if he's a protagonist, we should still want him to succeed in some way, whereas we are supposed to be basically rooting for the demon because we're supposed to hate this guy for doing all the things he did, but it takes the humanness out of our main character. So even when he grows, and we haven't really talked about that yet. I mean, do we care? It sounds like I mean Brandon hated him, and he sort of is kind of growing by the end, but then the ending kind of goes a very different direction. So I think narratively and character wise, it doesn't really work very well, and it's confusing. Like I mean, sure you can hate the protagonist if you want to, because there are plenty of instances where yeah, the villain we might like him because we don't like the main character, but that might also speak to poor writing, so poor
And
directing.
for the record, real quick, I just want to say, like, um, his politics for me was not the reason why because I don't want to get like political or anything like that. So
Hmm.
the politics isn't what bothered me about him. Although I'm happy you mentioned all that stuff too, Brad. But the main reason, like he's the main reason I didn't like him, he's cocky. He just comes across as a jerk. He signed off for his mother to die in the hospital. He forced his girlfriend. So I'm not going to get into abortion or anything like that, but if you want to make the argument of like the my body, my choice, which is what a traditional liberal would probably agree with, he even went against that because he forced her to have it for like satisfaction. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I can't be bothered with a child. He didn't even let his girlfriend have a say in the matter. You know what I mean? So that goes
Well,
against that argument. He didn't even let her choose, and it is her. But you know what I'm saying?
well, Brandon, that's the thing I want to jump on too is that kind of almost like an observation and a question, like we did in my class discussion today. Well, the the fact that he is written that way, though, I mean, he's kind. You're right. I think he's more unlikable, more than anything else, because of his attitude, the way he comes off, and I think that's a writing, acting, directing choice to make this guy so unlikable to the point where it's either unbelievable or it's just kind of going against maybe the goal of your narrative. Like, what's the goal of the film then? Because we're hating this guy for doing all these things that are wrong, but we almost are meant to hate this guy for being contrarian, and the demon's kind of the one putting him in his place, but the demon is just kind of all about evil. So it's just, I don't know. I think that's kind of confusing. Do you think that's like, do you hate him? Do you hate the character, I guess, because of the the fact that it was so poorly written, or is it just like, oh man, I hate him because of how he was in the film? Because it might be two things at the same time.
Brad, do you want to answer that, or because I
Yeah,
have my own thoughts on that?
the character is written to be unlikable. Um, and so I think it's wh- when I'm thinking about this, it's the way this film is written and the way it works. It's to me, it seems like an open letter. It's like an open letter to society. Like, look at how
Mm-hmm.
bad it's become. Look at these things that you are agreeing to. You are murderers as well, or you consent to these things, or the spirit world is real. This materialist is a fool, and then so the he's obviously written to be unlikable. I think that's the way it is. There's two separate issues there. So he's written to be unlikable. I also, like I said before, if we could have gotten, I don't know how, if we could have gotten a little better acting performance or somebody else to come in there that could hold like that can go toe to toe with the acting performance from the demon, maybe that would have fleshed it out a little bit. Because Yeah, I just think he's written to be on like you said, he's a character, he's like a caricature, like a grotesque caricature of that. Same thing with like the warden. It's like I'm the warden, it's
Yeah, he wasn't good
it's
either.
stereotypical
Well, yeah,
warden.
the warden was like, oh, you know what? Some people can be saved. No, he can't. Like, you're a terrible rehabilitate. Like, what do you know? Like that warden was like, forget the guy from Shawshank Redemption. That guy was horrible. Like,
Yeah.
no.
And here's the thing: the ironic thing is, I'm pretty sure I don't want to put, no, I don't want to again. We don't have to get into the politics of it, but I'm pretty sure the guy who wrote the book, and I'm pretty sure the people are probably they're probably pro death penalty, pro capital punishment. And this movie was like, hey, like this is like a big warning against capital punishment. Like the warden is like
Is it?
he's pining for this guy to die. And then he's like, here, look at we found this book. If you don't give us the okay to kill him, he's gonna come out and kill you. And then uh I don't know.
There were so many things wrong with that scene that didn't make any sense.
Um, on the
Oh
writing
man.
thing though, and just sorry, Brad, were you done?
Yeah,
I
I'm
didn't
done.
want to. And kind of going off of that, because I don't want to make this political either. So like anything I say, like I'm looking at it from like a factual standpoint.
Hmm.
So I'm not gonna say my personal beliefs on any of this stuff. Um, but I will say, getting back to the writing, um, I thought I thought his character was well written. Um, and just from the standpoint that, like kind of Brad said,
The
you're not
doctor, are you
supposed
talking
to
about?
like him,
Talking about the
huh?
doctor. Are you talking about the
I'm talking
doctor?
about the doctor.
Department?
The
Okay.
doctor. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry. The doctor. I thought he was well written because it achieved, if that was what they wanted to achieve, it achieved it. Like whether you lean to the right or lean to the left, it goes back to what I was, and that's the point I was trying to make. Because usually if you talk to a traditional uh well, a traditional Republican is not gonna like this guy. And neither would a traditional Democrat, because it goes back to what, like the point I was trying to make earlier. What I meant by that, the "my body, my choice" comment was, if you talk to a Democrat person, that is probably the side they would take. So he's kind of going against both parties. You know what I mean? A Republican's not going to like him, and neither is a Democrat, because if you know a Democrat that would, because you know both sides of the aisle, you know, usually like you might meet Republicans that are okay with abortion, you might meet Democrats that are okay with abortion, but regardless, you know, nobody's going to like this guy because he contradicts both ideas. Does that make sense? That's what I was trying to say by that. Because like
Uh,
he forced her to have it. Like he didn't even let her decide. Like it was all about him. So it's not really a political thing as much as it is an ego. Like it's his world, we're living in it. You know what I'm saying?
he comes off as like a very pretentious, stuck up, overly intellectual guy who, well, honestly, just doesn't seem to really come off like he really cares about anyone either. It's unfortunate. I guess he's the next best guy after the previous guy to be involved in this interview. But yeah, I guess no. I think if he was designed to be that way, okay, well, maybe it's not necessarily, I guess, a fault in the writing if that was their goal. But I think that the goal then to make such, you're right, such a character who's so unlikable from just any general story standpoint, then if he is your main character and he doesn't really have anything about him that's likable, I think traditionally that's a problem because even going back to There Will Be Blood, right? You know, just to go back to a great film, there's an example of a main character with a lot of flaws, but there was still something likable and human and believable about him that we could kind of connect and sympathize with. Where this guy, the doctor, doesn't really have much to the point where I think it's to the detriment of it. We're not going to root for a main character, which on some level traditionally you want to root for your main character in some way. So I think that's just kind of a failure of your standard story. So if that's their goal, they succeeded, but I think it might have hurt their message a little if that's the case, or just the standard progression of the, because his growth at the, we haven't even got to the ending. I mean, then I don't know, almost making me seem like the growth is almost forced, or that comes off corny. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's unfortunate because yeah, whether it was just okay, so maybe it wasn't a failing of the writing, but it was something that was a little too narrow minded that it kind of hurt other elements of the film. Because as a character, as an actor, either way, it didn't really work.
Something, two things. I'm gonna make one quick like funny thing, and then I want to bring up something Brad brought up earlier. Does anybody else get mad Tom Cruise vibes from the Doctor? He reminded me of Tom
Uh,
Cruise.
not
Well,
me.
not really. Not till you say it now. No.
Okay,
Do you think he
just
liked
like the,
flying those smooth jets?
well, I don't know. He just kind of he looked and sounded like Tom Cruise to me. I
Well,
don't
look,
know, like a taller
if
version.
Tom
I would
Cruise,
love
well,
to see Tom Cruise in that
oh,
role.
oh, if they had gotten Tom Cruise in this, because he could have played that character, and even though he would have been just a jerk and just as unrealistic and like stereotypical, he would have put so much energy and humanness in his performance that I would have found him more likable, even if he was a jerk, and I would have
Yeah,
believed in his growth more. Yes,
that'd be a
sure.
good pick,
We should
right?
they should
Yeah,
have picked
that was
Tom
my
Cruise for the
point. That's
remake.
what you need a fitting rival for Nefarious. You need Tom. We need Tom Cruise.
We
Can
need
we just
Tom.
pretend that Tom Cruise was in Nefarious?
Help me. Help you.
He'd be like,
Yeah,
"Oh, what do you
we can do
mean?
that.
Oh, sure, fine. I could see even yeah. Tom Cruise would have been better. Agreed.
CGI
Same thing
Tom
as like,
Cruise.
CGI
but
him
like,
in there with the
but like, even that point though, even in like A Few Good Men, like there's aspects to that character that he plays that you're not supposed to like, but you end up rooting for him because you definitely don't like Jack Nicholson's character. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But I don't know. But something I wanted to ask Brad. Now you mentioned a book, so I will say, and I know I'm bringing up the political thing again, but I think it's always so in the book. Do they say that he is like a liberal and a Democrat? Do they come out and say that?
I don't know anything about the book. I just know who wrote the book.
Okay,
I mean,
I just think that's
I think given who he is, who he works for, his politics, and the way that the character is written, I think it's fairly obvious, like what is being done there. That was opinion
Well,
about that.
that's
Oh,
also kind of an yeah. Go ahead, Brad.
no, I was just say I think that's always the reason I asked that is like I think it's always dangerous to like when you're dealing with characters like this. I always like keeping politics out of it because I feel like when you're watching a movie, like I always think politics has no bit. So if you come out and say
Well,
like that character is a liberal, like I
yeah,
just think that gives people like a
I
stereotypical
yeah,
idea, which
I
I think
don't
is
think
dangerous. I think stereotypes are dangerous. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think we need to leave, there's no I don't think there's a problem with that. Like if that's what's happening, but it just wasn't done well, is what I'm saying.
Yes, I want to piggyback on what both you guys are saying because you actually were going to my point. That was another one of my issues with the movie is, and this is kind of tricky sometimes, but and I think I noticed this sometimes with independent filmmakers, and I don't know if this director's is experienced, whatever. But when you're making a film, typically, you if you have a message, or a theme, you want it to be integrated smoothly into the narrative. You want it to be natural. This movie feels more like a platform for ideas than an actual plot in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of lack of subtlety where it's just kind of hammering home these message over your head with the sledgehammer. And anytime any movie does that, it's like if you do a movie where they're like, "Oh yeah, save the trees," and it's like super obvious. It's got to almost kind of dilute the message you're trying to get in the first place. And I think that that's something that this film does a bit as well. Whatever goals it was trying to say. And yeah, and if you have a character that's like, oh, really stereotypical, well, they're over here, they're completely wrong. We're going to make sure they seem completely wrong by making their representation, kind of flat and ridiculously horrible. And our proponent for our ideas is this representation of evil that we also hate. So that's just kind of like something that I think is once again a bit confusing about what the movie's trying to do. Like I don't think that the good guy should have been the demon in this sense, but that's kind of where, like you said, we almost root for Nefarious because he's putting this guy in his place, but he's kind of sort of oddly helping him in a weird way, which I think he mentions towards the end. But it's just kind of
Well,
weird.
I know that Glenn Beck is like really, really, really far to the right. I'm pretty sure. He's like a conservative radio host, right? Like he's on the oh
Glenn
yeah.
Beck.
Hmm.
So what I find ironic about that is, and typically if you call yourself a conservative, in the general sense of the word, and again it's stereotypes, but I mean typically like you're more devout, I guess, in whatever you believe. And I just think it's weird that somebody that and again it's a huge flaw, like somebody that is probably really, really, really far to the right would want you to root for a demon. Does that make sense? Like, you know what I'm
Yeah, I
trying
think
to
that's a bit
say?
weird.
Like, you know where I'm coming from? I'm not trying to keep stereotypes out of it, but if I saw something that was probably traditionally done by a someone that would call themselves a conservative and is on a conservative talk show, I would assume that by the end of the movie, like if your message was like, oh, conservatism, blah blah, you're not going to want a demon to win. And I feel like that's what happened. Does that make sense?
Kinda, yeah. And I don't know. I think that was. I don't know if that was the intention, but that's sort of how it ends up, in a way, which is a bit unfortunate. Yeah. Um, Although we still have like this line of like the demon's obviously bad, but he ends up sort of being the proponent of good in an odd way while still being a horrible demon. So it's a bit weird in that sense. It's a bit contradictory,
Or I could just
unfortunately.
be completely wrong. Like I said, I I thought it from an
Well,
emotional standpoint it was good, but I feel like by the end of the movie I didn't understand what they were trying to accomplish. Does that make
that that
sense?
that's what I was kind of confused
That's
about
what
by
I'm
the
trying
end.
to say. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. I agree with you. I think it's just the messaging is a bit confusing with how they ultimately did it. And I think we were right. If they had done it a bit more intricately and they had broken things up and fleshed them out more as people and given some sympathy to allow our character to grow more naturally, I think it would have worked a bit better because the demon works pretty well as an antagonist and that performance is so good. But like Brad said, we don't really have anything else to interweave with that interesting character and that good performance. Unfortunately, um,
Something else too. When I so when Father was talking about the movie, and I want your guys' thoughts on this too. But going into it, the theme I think was off too. Like you see something called Nefarious, and you hear someone talk about it, you think it's going to be an exorcism movie. You know what I mean? Like the
all right.
priest like walking away like that, like totally threw me off guard. Like you know,
Well,
I didn't like that priest either. You know, like sorry, go ahead.
well, no, Brandon. I'm glad you brought that up because I'll admit this is a bit of a nitpick for me, but this isn't necessarily the movie's fault, but it's definitely a marketing issue fault. Because I think we mentioned it's not a traditional horror movie; it's more like a psychological thriller, but it's marketed very clearly as a horror movie. I heard it's described as a horror movie. And it's not. There's that was so I think I had this expectation of one thing, but the weird thing is on some level they knew that maybe that was to try to get it out there
Yeah.
because they had some messages they want to get across, but like the actual horror in this is laughable. I mean, the in terms of traditional horror because you had like one or two jump scares, like a light bulb thing, which it was kind of cool that they said, "Oh, was that the light going out, or was that me?" You'll never know. So the demon uses that to mess with them. That was cool, but then they don't really do much else for the rest of the movie. And I mean, there's the opening, which, all right, I gotta ask you guys, what did what did you think about the opening of the movie?
The protesters.
Remember with the
The
previous
Dr. Allen.
psychiatrist, he's
Oh,
like he's adjusting his picture, it's off and crooked, and then he goes out and then like they just okay, it's actually at first I thought it was good because it reminded me of like the opening of an X-Files episode. And, there could have been the
Oh
dude
yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
but the problem is I love X-Files as great intros, but the cut they should have almost maybe held a few more seconds because he goes up the elevator and then whew, he's fallen off the building. That was so random you almost can't register it in your mind what happened. And then they do the slow turn back. I'm gonna admit I laughed a little bit. I was like, you know, that was just I thought that part was kind of corny. And then I guess the ending. I mean, I think the maybe the most terrific part is the execution, which I guess I'm going to ask you guys about again. That part was actually was interesting, but then we do the talk show thing, which I kind of liked, but was also really disjointed for the rest of the movie. And then the ending irritated me so much because we've had this. It's supposed to be uplifting, but then we've got the demon out there. Is the woman on the street? I think it's a homeless woman, and they got the stereotypical horror cue music, which has been absent like the whole movie. So did they just add
yes.
that in and post and say, "Oh man, we made this movie to be a horror movie. There's not a horror movie. Oh, now we'll add this tag on to say it's a stereotypical horror movie." This movie is like what 3% horror or something. It's just
It's a
which
thriller. It's a thriller, if anything, in my opinion.
yeah, it's a thriller, but they didn't have full confidence in that clearly because they try to do a couple little jump scare and they're very, very weak, and it just they should have left them out. I think it would. I don't know. It was just some of that stuff annoyed me. Thoughts, guys? I'm sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent there.
No, I agree. I agree
Uh,
about the beginning. Like it kind of now that you mention it, this is kind of like the beginning of an X-Files episode. Dr. Alan Fisher, he goes up, he jumps. What they should have done is like pan back to his TV, and he had just finished watching Napoleon. So then he
Uh,
suicide himself because he couldn't take it.
Joe,
He's watching Warcraft.
oh gosh.
Yeah,
No,
that's a deep
that's
cut
what I'm
right there.
talking about, Joe. That's what I mean. It's like
Starring Shrek? Sorry, go ahead.
he's watching Shrek. What's the second Shrek? The
Shrek 2. Oh.
And then you have Shrek Forever After, of course. Sorry, go ahead, Brad.
Sorry, what were you gonna say, Brad?
no, the core of the movie is the performance. Nefarious, the actor Sean Patrick Flannery, his performance, and that's the core of the movie. and the superstructure built around it could not hold it up. It's like disjointed. The beginning's disjointed. You have this. We have no protagonist save for a demon. And then Glenn Beck is at the end. What
Yeah.
went? What the? I didn't expect Glenn Beck. And then
Can
I
I?
was like, and then
Right.
the homeless black lady. I'm like, what? They should have did that like at the end of the movie, at the end of the video for Thriller. You know, Michael Jackson's Thriller, when they like the Vincent Price.
Yes.
Just put Vincent Price's
Oh my.
up there. So yeah, it. I will say this. I remember hearing they purposefully gave it a name and marketed it like a horror movie to draw people in and to give them this spiritual message. I will comment about that. Uh, my degree is in theology. Okay, I'm also teach religion. It was for the most part. Brandon, you talked several times about Father Zeta, who I know, who thinks this is basically Citizen Kane, but he because it's theologically sound. And he's an exorcist. Like if he was an arm wrestler, he would like over the top. He's an exorcist, so he likes
It's a bad movie.
various.
Over the top.
It is theologically sound. I mean, some of the stuff like as a theology major, I'm like, I started to like mark out for some of it. Like it was like, oh, he's talking about. You usually don't get into that in like an exorcism movie. You usually don't get that deep, which is ironic because you like you said, you're bringing in the priest. Oh, here should be the foil, and he's just this hippie boomer, awful priest who doesn't do anything. Just he gets run out of the room. He's a joke, actually. The guy says, "You should have came and seen me. Why don't you come back?" And it's kind of funny the way his dialogue there with the priest. I do like that. I also liked some of the dialogue. It was a little choppy, but I like the idea like I'm this ancient spirit. I'm a demon that you don't believe in, and you're here to check out whether or not you can kill me. You're going to kill three people by the time you leave here. I like this thing that's set up. So now you have that set up. My problem is, uh, the Doctor Martin, couldn't hang with it. It just got, like when we get to the book, like I'm talking about the book. I'm like, well, what happened to I don't know, the book, and then Glenn Beck, and then uh, I don't know. I like the core of it a lot. I like that idea. I like that a lot, and I could see why. Like when this came out, I had people telling me like, "This is so awesome! Go and see it." Like go to the theater and see it, and in this, and then there were people that absolutely trashed it, and it was for the same reasons. It was like either the spiritual political part you really liked and you thought it was awesome, or you really hate it and you thought the movie was horrible. um and so I don't think, and maybe we can talk more about the ending or whatever you want to. I don't think it's as great as some people make it out to be, and I don't think it's as horrible as some people make it out to be. It is, Joe, like you said, by the time you watched it, it was probably hyped up a little bit. Um, and so maybe it suffers from that, like when I viewed it. Um, and I've seen it twice. I went back like 2 months later and watched it again. So I have that analysis as well. Like how does it, I didn't give it a lot of time, but how does it hold up to a rewatch? That's one of the things about a movie, maybe. But um, so yeah, I do like, because we seem to be stomping on it a little bit. I do like the idea of this dialogue with this spiritual thing. Like you don't know what's going on, and I like to go back and forth the way he did uh, Edward Wayne Brady, who's the voice changes, the mannerisms change. He's pathetic.
Ticks.
You sympathize with him, and he's victimized, and you see like what this evil demon can do to somebody. Like he's taken everything from him, and he's murdered people. And so yeah, I like that core of it, but like from the beginning to the end, it just, I guess what I'm saying, I'll repeat myself. I didn't think the structure was there to hold that up, to carry that. That's what I think.
So this will probably be the last main point I make that I'm just dying to get. It has to. I want to answer Joe's question because it was the last thing I wanted to kind of bring up with it. Um, the beginning, in my opinion, was not needed. We did not need to know. You didn't have to have that part with the old therapist. You could have just said that in like he could have just mentioned that. We didn't have to see the guy dying. I don't think that was needed. Um and they you get into the marketing aspect. I understand why they marketed it the way they did, but this would have been so much better of a movie if A, like you said, both of you, you categorize it as something other than horror, but two, it just, in my opinion, was not realistic in the sense that I think Brad mentioned the theologies. I'm not well versed in that. So if what he's saying true, I believe it because that's his discipline. That's and same with Father Zeta. But I just for me, I had a really hard time believing that and that Brad actually told me there are, I guess, priests like that. But I had a really hard time believing that. I had a really hard time believing that the homeless lady just is magically nefarious. It just seemed like they had a lot of potential to do something really good with this concept, and they totally butchered it. So either you focus on the theology and you show a traditional exorcism, because remember this isn't real. It's fiction based on nonfiction, like things that can happen, right? But since this is a fiction movie we're talking about, to me, you either really dive into the theology aspects or you really dive into what can happen with demon worship or whatever. But I think they just really missed the ball on theming and really just in general having the movie make a whole lot of sense. You know what I'm trying to say?
I just want to add quickly to what you said there, and then we can if we want to wrap it up here because uh I again the I think the court, like they had the potential elements there. Here's the interview with the serial killer. I'm really a demon. What are you going to do with that? Now, also, I'm going to show you how you're wicked. And then you have the aspect of like the clock's ticking. We need you to make a decision. Can this guy be put to death or not? Because if it doesn't happen, then, it's going to be. So you have the tension there. The clock's ticking. He, and then you're a murderer, I'm a murderer, you're a murderer, like in putting the atheist materialist on trial. Is this guy insane? Is he a demon? And what's going on? You have that there. I just think it gets so watered down when you're introduced. You're going to write my book, and then and this other stuff because I'm like the flipping book, like what? Because I was right there. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, they come in, the priest comes in, the guy comes in, and then it just seemed to me like they're setting up for a sequel or setting up for I don't know.
Hmm.
And even
I
like
didn't know
him
what
getting
to do
those
with it.
pictures. Sorry, go ahead.
To what?
The pictures, like you even question yourself, like how the heck did he get pictures of him when he was a kid? Like, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't make sense. Like, where would he have gotten those pictures in that book in his cell? Like, that's what I mean. Like, you're
Yeah,
supposed to
how
be
did he
taking the
get
movie
him into
seriously.
his cell? Because he's like on death
Yeah,
row. How did he get his scrapbook?
Yeah.
right.
His
This is
copy of
not
his
realistic.
DVD of Shrek is on the counter.
That was
Hey, I
his beeline to Shrek.
before we
Inside
wrap
Man.
up, I did want to say one last thing. Actually, what Brad was talking about.
Hmm.
So one thing I did leave out of the plot, I'm actually happy Brad just mentioned it, and something that our viewers need to know if they're going to watch this. Brad brought up against the clock. Yeah. So I forgot to put this in the summary. They had to make a decision by what was it, 10, 11 o'clock PM? So that was a huge part of the movie. Like, because you as you're watching it, you're like, oh, they got to make this decision. So I'm actually really happy Brad said that. I left that out. And the other thing,
Yeah.
this will be the last thing, along with not
The third
theming it
last.
correctly, even But something I forgot to mention, we brought up politics a lot. They even failed at that. Like after watching this movie, like talking to you guys, like I think they were trying to make a political stance, but they failed miserably. I wasn't sure if I was watching a pro like liberal point of view. I wasn't sure if I was watching like a pro conservative point of view. You know what I'm trying to say? Like when you see who like directed it and stuff, you're thinking it's going to be what you would say again, your stereotypical like conservative person, but there was kind of both going on. So I feel like with this movie, a conservative, a stereotypical like not to stereotype, but a stereotypical conservative probably isn't going to like it, and neither is a stereotypical person on the left. You know what I mean? Like I think they really dropped the ball on that. If that's the stance they wanted to take. Again, remember, I'm trying to be as middle of the road as possible. So that's the last thing. I'm done.
Mic drop. Boom. Got to take Brad's mic and just drop it. Uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like we covered a lot of the points that I was thinking about. I really agree that like I almost feel because I like low budget movies and I like independent movies, so I don't want to like put that against this, but this is one of those things where I'm just picturing this same film, but like with the studio, with bigger named actors, a longer runtime, more plot elements. You know, I'm thinking like David Fincher tackles this, and like they make it more ambiguous at first, and then you think, oh, he looks up more about theology and demonology, and oh, there's connections, and then you're not really sure, and then there's kind of a twist where, oh wow, there's really something to this. Like I'm thinking about something along the lines of like Seven, you know, but like with that aspect, I could see this as a concept, like a more minimalized version of that based on the interview. Kind of goes back, yeah, Silence of the Lambs, like yeah, riffing on other things, but just going that more focused spiritual angle with it. That could have been really cool. But I just don't think that the movie had enough money, enough time, and enough talent. Like the concept there was the ticking clock, but watching the movie, I was even thinking, how long does he get with this guy again? It feels like he's been talking to him forever, and then oh, you get to go back in. Like the pacing, it didn't really feel like there was as much of a ticking clock, even though there theoretically should have been. So that's just another area where they dropped the ball too. So I agree with you guys. I think that really interesting concept, and like I said, I think at the beginning when they're first talking to each other, and it's like you're a little ambiguous, and you see the switch and how confident Nefarious is, and kind of taking this guy down a peg, and he's not really sure. Like it starts off so strong, but I felt like it loses steam just gradually, and for a fairly short movie, I thought it dragged a bit. So you know, it didn't really hold my attention as much as it was kind of a struggle for me to get through, honestly, just because of that. Didn't have quite enough going on to mix it up. And I will make one other final point when we do our minds, because I want to kind of justify my grade. But I was sort of thinking about a couple. I'm always thinking about other movies. You know, whenever we're talking about it, I'm inevitably comparing it to something else. I think it did better, and I'm like, man, I've seen other movies do this. And oh, actually, I'm sorry, I'm being like Brandon now. Two other little things. I want to pay kind of a compliment to the movie, a little compliment, and a just kind of a little quick question for you guys, because like it's like a half compliment. Um, I liked the subtle kind of foreshadowing at the very beginning. Remember when he's driving to the prison and he can hear Glenn Beck in the radio talking about the case and about the killer. That was a great little detail for more subtle world building that was
Hmm.
very natural in the movie. And so it was there. And I wish we had more things like that to make it feel more real and visceral. So that was cool. And I mean, on one hand, it's like the movie sabotaged itself a bit, because you had that cool little moment, which is like, oh, like I saw Glenn Beck was in this. This is the cameo. Cool. He's on the radio. Cool. And then he's doing a freaking interview. So on one hand, I think, okay, that was foreshadowing. But then I'm like, well, it was kind of fine when he was just on the radio, but then he's on the interview doing, purporting his own stuff. So I'm like, once again, takes you out of it a little bit. So you did something good, and then you kind of maybe canceled it out. So I thought it was like, I don't know, it was weird there. And then another thing I want to ask you guys, because you both brought it up, because I was expecting kind of a more traditional exorcist possession sort of movie, I was really looking forward to when the priest or the minister came in, and I thought, oh, we're going to have another character, another dynamic, someone to talk to and getting their perspective back and forth, right? But then he leaves, and I agree. I wish they hadn't done that, but is it possible, just to try to pay Nefarious a compliment a second, do you guys think it's possible that I think they failed, but do you think they were trying to be experimental and subversive by saying, ooh, in most movies, here the priest comes in to save the day. This time the demon will be able to fool him and he's actually kind of a joke, we'll push him out. Do you think that was trying to be a little different? Because I think that's what they were. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think I think the priest is intentionally weak. He has no supernatural faith. And
Mm-hmm.
the pre again, like I said, this feels more like I said, an open letter or a platform in which to show, like, spread this message. Part of the message is that it's not only those who are, atheistic or materialistic, it's other people, like, the world is in a bad spot, and the spiritual darkness extends even into that realm. Like, the priesthood has been tainted by the materialism. He doesn't believe in demons. He doesn't believe in exorcisms. Like, he wants to come in and talk to him. He's even got that weird stole. It's like a, you know, Southwest pattern thing in there. It's like
Yeah, it was weird and different.
he's like a boomer, like I said. And so I, I don't hate that. I appreciated that. Like, oh, he's failed.
Mm-hmm.
You can't stop me. Like, because the demon reacts to him. I'm scared, and then he figures out, like, oh, he's not a
The
worthy
real
act.
deal.
He's not the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a problem with that. Like, I just go back to, again, it lost its way. I don't know. It lost its way. That's all.
Okay.
Is it interesting? So to answer your question, Joe, it it got me thinking. I don't think this was their intent, but for me, somebody who was raised in the church, I and still is practicing, I would assume that I kind of had the same thought of you. I was like, oh, here comes the priest. He's coming in to save the day. That was not the reaction I was thinking. And then after talking to Brad, I mean, those people do exist. So whether that was trying to tell you that, or I don't think they were really trying to be creative. I think
Oh man.
I, I I think if anything, it was probably meant more like just to get the viewer to kind of fall guilty of what we were, like think that the priest is going to do that because that's what we see in every Exorcist movie. So you know what, in a way, yeah, I guess it is pretty creative, but I didn't think it was as creative after I talked to Brad and found out that there are actually priests out there that are like that guy. And I'm not bashing a priest by any means. It's just a matter of fact that these people do exist. Unfortunately. But in no means am I saying anything bad about a priest. I would never do that. In the movie I will, that guy was terrible, but that wasn't a real priest, that was an actor. But
Thank God he's
I will
played by
say
a real priest, so you just charge.
What if? Oh
He's a real
no!
oh
priest.
no, I'm sorry. I'm
Whoops.
sorry then. I'm sorry. But I will say too, there was another thing. Oh, and Brad, I don't know if you picked up on this. Joe, maybe you did too, but I'd really be interested if Brad picked up on it. Do you notice, like, the demon, even when the demon put his hand out and wanted to shake the priest's hand, I thought it was ironic that the priest said, I don't believe in demons, but he's scared at Nefarious. So, like,
Well, he's
what
a
do you mean? You
serial
just said,
killer. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a
not gonna
serial
mess with that
killer.
guy.
He's insane. So I guess he just doesn't really want to get involved. Let me know if you need to talk. I don't really want
I'd rather not get
Yeah.
involved if it's all the same
so,
demon.
to.
Brad, I'm
I only work in a
curious then.
prison.
I got a little cold or something. I'm just
Like,
gonna
what are you
not.
even doing here? Like, not today. But this is your job. You're here. No,
You
nah,
should have did that, like,
nah.
psych, and then, like, what?
He's like, you know what? You got this, man. You got this. It's your
Yeah.
movie.
So, Brad, I'm curious though, real quick. What is, and based on what you know about theology, and I don't know how much you know about what is taught at seminary and things like that. It'd be cool to have Father Zeta on here. too. But what do they go into demons and things like that when priests are going to school? Like, I just thought it was really weird that a priest didn't believe
Well, I think
that
that's the
demons
point,
exist.
Brandon. Like,
You know?
given his age, like he came of age in like the 60s and 70s, and the point is, it was watered down. It was very much like infected by the
The culture.
liberalizing tendency of modernism, like the lack of belief. They touch upon that too. I think they do a good job. Speaking of The Exorcist, the priest in The Exorcist, Father Karras, he doesn't believe either. Like he's a very with it modern hip priest, and then he's shocked. I mean, he gets shocked by it. So it's the same.
See, he he's a character who starts somewhere and he
He has an
grows. He
arc.
has an arc. He has an
Yeah,
arc. He's not perfect, but he grows. He learns. He gets stronger. Hero's journey stuff. Something this movie is lacking a little bit.
yeah, I agree. So that's what that priest is. He's again a character, a symbol of that. He's a symbol. So these people are symbols, I think, which I don't have a problem with per se. But if you're gonna uh, like, it's just plot problems. It's just all over the place.
And not to go off topic because I do want us to wrap it up soon, but even speaking to that, Brad, like I just watched Stalker for the first time. Talk about a movie where characters are symbols, but even in that, they are characters who still go through an arc.
Yeah.
So even doing it that way, you could still work. So it can be done. But,
So,
different.
real quick, I did some research here. The priest
So,
is
Brandon,
played by.
What?
Go ahead. I would just say, is this the eighth or ninth last?
The priest is played by Elgar Abinick. And it's interesting because this came from an AI source, and it really doesn't make sense. I don't think AI has ever seen.
Whoa! We're not using AI for our sources on this podcast. As an educator, English teacher, no, go back. No, find another. What?
What's the
AI?
guy's name?
What are you using
Elgar.
over there?
Elgar.
Elgar Abinick.
No, bro, that's a bot. A bot just.
Abink.
That's
Abink.
digital
No, it's
generated
and then
answer.
IMDb has the same thing, but this is what AI said.
I am.
AI IMDb. AI IMDb.
No, I believe you.
Who the
No, I'm
hell?
with
Don't
you.
trust
I
it,
got
man.
you.
Don't trust the robots. Don't
The
trust
bull.
Skynet, man.
The bull Elgar.
Wait,
The
then it
bull.
goes. Then it
That
goes
young
on to
bull.
say
That
Daniel
old
Martin.
bull came in, yo.
With the Browns, with the Johns.
Oh, that John.
Oh.
Yo, you broke
Wait,
his.
was there a 2016 version of Nefarious
That's the-
too? Because then it says,
That's the book.
Oh.
okay,
The Nefarious
Dan-
Plot, probably talking about.
it says Daniel Martin Berkeley plays Father Lewis and Sean Patrick Flannery plays Edward Wayne Brady Nefarious. Flannery also portrays the demon Nefarious, who tries to convert an atheist psychiatrist. Convert to what?
Exactly.
What's
To the dark
that's
side, I
that's what
guess.
I
If
was
the
trying to say
AI
with
doesn't
AI.
know, if the AI doesn't know, what man, we have
Publish
no
his
hope.
book.
I mean,
What?
Yeah.
he wants him to publish the book. Okay, he really wants to. He couldn't get anywhere, and the major
What?
publishers, he had to go through this whole scheme. See, it's not really about this whole grand plan. It's just he wants to be a published author. That's what he wants. That's all he. That's all it's really about. It's recognition. Okay, he's
The
not
demon's
taken
got the book.
seriously in his circles. I'm not really appreciating my time. I got to publish it, but we got to do it through you. They won't accept me. I'm kind of nefarious.
It's crazy. Nefarious didn't even want any of the royalties from the book. He just wanted.
Oh,
the,
that's so. Are you kidding me? He would want all those royalties.
Well, his
He would
his
want
royalties are the guy's soul.
monetary.
He's getting
He
his
could.
soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's getting
True.
his soul.
True.
I better
But I was
said
thinking
monetary.
the funding to raise his army for the follower. Come on, come on, we'll build it. This is the movie, the potential.
But hey,
the potential.
money's the root of all evil.
The love of money.
But
is
a common misinterpretation. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. You want to give it the
Wow.
minds?
What a review.
Do you mind?
What? Where's the bull Elgar?
Can that be the thumbnail?
The bull.
Well,
The bull. Oh, oh, who
Just
wants
put
to?
the thumbnail. Just make Tom Cruise.
Just a picture of Tom Cruise is nefarious, and hey, that'll get some clicks. Like
The old
what?
head. Oh, the old
The
head.
old, the old bull Tom, the old bull,
He was like
and he's doing
nefarious. Tom
stunts.
Cruise wasn't
Can you
in
imagine?
there.
It's like Tom Cruise signs on, but he's like, I will only do this movie if I get to do 12 stunts. Okay, where I get to fight the demon in the sky.
He beats
Okay,
it. He beats
it's
it.
just like kung fu, like and I, you know what? They should pitch this as a potential. It could have been awesome. That could have been awesome, man. Tom, well, he's a Scientologist though, so I don't know if he would have gone
They
into
should
it.
have
But
got
still,
Steven Seagal for the warden.
yes. Oh, for
He
the
just
warden,
racist.
no, he wouldn't stand up. He'd just be in the room. I'm not coming out of the office, but just don't just kill that guy. Don't even bother interviewing him. I don't have time for this. And then he gets that one scene and they have to dub it his line. See, it would have improved it though. I don't know if it would have been good, but it would have. Oh,
What's the problem, man? What's the problem? Come on, man. You want something?
Right. All
would that
right.
have made the word more likable?
Oh yeah.
You know, Brandon, we got to get you to watch some Seagal movies, man. Maybe that'll be my pick. I don't know. We'll see.
They come across my Facebook feed all the time, like his fight scenes. Like they come across my, I'll just be scrolling. It's like every time it says some cheesy, like it's like when Steven Seagal tells you to sit down, you sit down, and then like there's one little clip where he's like, "You want to sit down," and then that turns into like a 10-minute fight scene with
Well,
Steven Seagal.
oh man, what a gem. What a
Mhm.
cultural touchstone.
Is he still alive?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
he's in Russia.
Oh
But
yeah,
we're not going to get into it. We got to wrap this up.
yeah.
We've gone off the rails. It's okay. Who wants to go first? Brandon, since you led, do you want to go first? I'll
Brandon's
go last this
movie.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
Brandon, you start,
I'll go
buddy.
first.
Get a hot take.
Much like with every Movie
12
Minds
minds.
episode, I go into it thinking one thing, and then whether it's good or bad at the end. So, like, usually with movies that I don't like, I go in and I'm like, oh, it's awful. And then by the end, I'm like, oh, it wasn't as bad. So, going into Nefarious from an emotional standpoint, I was ready to give this like a 4. Um, and then some of the points you guys made, and when I really started thinking about it, the theming was not good. There was like one really good actor, phenomenal actor, but then the rest was kind of just blah. Um, I went into it expecting one thing and didn't really get what I thought it was going to be. It really didn't have kind of the points I made earlier. I wasn't sure if what I was watching a political stance. I wasn't sure if it was a movie about the Catholic Church. I wasn't sure if it was about an Exorcist movie. With the Glenn Beck thing at the end, that was nothing against Glenn Beck, but that was totally unexpected, and the beginning really didn't have any value. I'm giving this overall a 2.5 mines. That's how much we've nitpicked this, and like you guys brought up some really good points, and the main thing is it goes back to nowadays it's like everybody wants to get political, and I think that's what these guys were trying to do, but they failed miserably in that message, because I don't think somebody if a traditional person on the right is going to like it. I don't think a traditional stereotypical person on the left is going to like it. I think maybe they were trying to appease both sides, but neither side so from a political standpoint, not good. From a Catholic religious standpoint, not good. And from a movie, but again, Brad knows more about theology than I do, so he might have a different take. But from a movie fan, yeah, I was underwhelmed. So 2.5.
Well, you're excommunicated now because you
Oh no.
trashed the
Oh
fans.
yeah, I'm
I'll go.
so
I'll go next, Joe.
Okay.
Okay. So already went through some of the weaknesses. Really, I go back to again. I really think Sean Patrick Flannery was did a great job. I really liked that. Um, it was built up for me, but I came in. It did hold my interest. I just uh there's so many things I thought. Like I said, he's great, and there's nobody else to come in and add to that to support the core here. I really like the idea. I go back to again the demon putting the atheist on trial. Like you think you're killing me? No, I got you right where I want you. I like that. It's a psychological exploration of the psyche, this guy's lack of belief. Why don't you believe? Here's some evidence and you still refuse. You're a rotten person. You can't judge me. And then when he goes back to Edward Wayne Brady, he's very, does a great job, very pathetic, sad character, gets into that. However, again, some other things, I can't remember anything except for that horror music at the end. Like I don't remember anything about a soundtrack. The camera work was okay. I mean, it is what it is. It's in a room mostly. That's fine. The supporting cast weak, and I guess this is a story issue with the book, and then the execution is supposed to be the crescendo, and then we go into this like Glenn Beck. I don't know. I didn't like the ending. And I know it's a book. And I know that's the point, is like now he's marketing this demon's book. He should have went on Oprah. But you went Glenn Beck. And then like the woman at the end, like, hey, what would she say to him? Hey Jimmy or something?
Hmm.
Like I don't like that. So that I was all over the place on this when I was thinking about it. Um, so I'm going to, I, I really liked it up to a point when I first watched it, and then that started to wane. I tried to give it a rewatch to maybe see if I missed anything. Um, so I'm going to give it three out of five mines.
Party time. All right. Now it's me. Well, we've covered a lot of different things. I don't think I liked it as much as either of you did. I wanted to say I think that when I'm looking at this movie for what it's sort of trying to do, maybe a little bit of the marketing hurt it for me as well. I think that the concept was really cool, and you had a one good performance there. There was some good dialogue for sure, but I don't think it was enough, as we talked about, foundationally to sustain it. And even if you have a movie that mostly takes place in one room, you do kind of have to mix it up with your cinematography, with your editing, with your lighting, with your sound design, with your soundtrack. So, from a tactical perspective, too, even that would have elevated the movie more. And so, for movies like this, and I haven't seen a ton of them, to be honest, there are definitely worse horror movies out there. But for the entertainment factor, I think there are some movies of the similar type that have just done it much better that I have seen that I've had to compare it to. Okay. And I'm just going to give you three that I recommend. Okay. You got The Exorcist. Okay. You've got Fallen. Okay. Which is a pretty good movie.
That's a good
And you've
one.
got Deliver Us from Evil, which is one of the more recent ones I saw. A very similar plot to this, and admittedly more traditional, but I thought that was much scarier and more effective at least getting across kind of this idea, even if it is a bit more abstract and emotional. This just didn't have a lot of those technical elements to which could have elevated it more. So honestly, this movie didn't have a lot for me, despite whatever its intentions were. I'm going to leave it with 1.5 mines. Not a fan of this movie.
There you have it.
There it is. There it is.
That's it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's yeah.
If it,
It was,
I will say, if it had actually been more of a horror movie and not marketed, those little stings that we talked about, like thrown in there, I might have given it like a 2. I was thinking about it, but no,
yeah.
no, not really.
I
It
think that
just
influenced me. I was not. I have to review it based on my own thing. I was not expecting a horror movie because I had been told enough about it, and I had read about the marketing of it before. I saw that. So that didn't bother me.
Mhm.
But
That was a minor thing.
I'm not sure what it was trying to be, and I'm not sure what it was trying to do. That's the problem. And so,
Mhm.
like again, I gave it a 3 on the power of his acting, and that I did think that little thing, like the tete-a-tete there, I did like where that was going,
Mhm.
and I was interested in what was going on up to it got kind of convoluted, but I did want to see it through, and then it kind of fell off the face of the earth. But yeah, so.
Yeah. Well, everybody, that was Movie Minds reviewing the film Nefarious. So maybe check it out. Might limit your expectations when you go in. I'm going to say goodbye for everybody. And I know what our fan pick is for the next one. I'm still going to hold off on my pick because I haven't decided yet. Would you like me to say it on the podcast or should I keep it suspense?
Podcast.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Brad wanted
You
suspense.
you want to hit? You want to go ahead? Go ahead. What do you got? What do you think?
Oh, well,
What's the viewer pick or the fan
yeah, yeah.
pick or
The viewer pick,
the Bulls
they
pick?
voted for the Bulls, the young Bulls voted. Quite a few voted. We selected some options from Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli, kind of a renowned anime director. Where they wanted us to do Princess Mononoke, which is a film I like quite a bit. So, the first anime film we'll be reviewing.
Wait, that's what they voted for, or that was a
Mhm.
suggestion?
That was what they voted for. Yeah,
Okay. Was it
yeah.
the?
The
Did he
Bulls.
have the Brown Johns? Did
I
he have
think I think he has Blue Johns on, if I remember correctly, but I don't know. We'll have to find out.
the
I never saw
Eastland
that.
Johns?
The Eastland, the I don't know. It's in medieval Japan, so I don't think he had the Eastlands or the
Yo.
Jordans or I don't think they had them produced
Oh
that
my
time. They didn't
God.
have the manufacturing or
I ain't
the
gonna hold you. I
infrastructure.
didn't watch
But
Nefarious.
what? Oh no,
Don't you have a review to
no!
do? All right.
It's like actually, I'll be honest with you guys. I didn't watch the
No
movie.
one watched it.
We did this whole review completely on like just conjecture and snippets of things. Hey, we did pretty good if that was the case.
Hey, that
This
was
whole thing has
awesome.
been a lot. Yeah.
Fit
No,
in
I'll say
Shrek, Seagal,
look,
Tom
Shrek, Seagal,
Cruise.
Stalker. Who else? Tom Cruise. Like everything happened on this pod. Like I will say this much, guys. I'll be honest. This is one of the like my least favorite movies we watched. Warcraft I didn't like that much, but like I didn't like the movie that much, but reviewing it with you guys was great. I liked that review much better than the movie, personally.
Can we just start? See, that's the thing. I feel like when we review obscure, like not so mainstream, we have a lot more fun. Like, I mean, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, the blockbusters are great, but it
Well,
kind of
look,
gets boring.
well,
I
Brandon,
like
that's the thing.
these.
Well, that's why we got to start doing. That's why we got to start picking more personal films off the wall. Because yeah, we've been playing it safe. Like most people like this, so we'll probably like this. We agree. We got to start. We disagree. We see different perspectives. We kind of push each other a little more. It makes it more interesting. We learn more.
This was probably our first controversial film.
Honestly, I think I'm not gonna lie, and well, I'm gonna hopefully just say a prayer or something. I hope this gets recorded okay because I think this might be my favorite episode of ours so far. This is really good.
Well, if
No, it was good.
Nefarious has anything to say about it, this ain't getting uploaded.
Well, don't
Just
just well, or someone else. Someone else has the power. Remember, we had that curse from a while back, so we got
Yeah.
to watch out. We
hey,
got to
before
watch
we
out.
go, can we just give a big shout out to Father Zeta though? Like, even though we probably didn't like it as much as him, I do want to thank him
Yeah,
for
sorry,
like
Father.
his take on it, and
You
I
think he's
truly do
watching
believe
this?
that. Well, I truly do believe
Just
like
in case.
because he's seen enough. So I do agree with him. Like the Exorcist stuff in the film was probably legit. Like I'm not denying that. Like
Oh, yeah, he knew.
I
Yeah.
believe Father Zeta on that. So I want to give
Mhm.
a huge shout out to him for even like putting this in our heads
I
to
do.
review.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
want to.
yeah.
I don't want to go into another review, so I'll keep it shut. But yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Shout out to the Bull. Father Zeta.
The
Bull. Bull.
the OG.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Father
Zeta.
Zeta.
That
What
was
a
a
great
great
name.
assembly. I was so happy he came. That was so good.
Hey, the kids were engaged. They were interested, as
Well,
were
hey
we all, I
guys,
think.
I know some of us, don't have to work tomorrow,
Some
so
of
it's
us
whatever. But
have to work tomorrow, sir. Yeah, yeah, I know what you've been doing. It's just yeah. Mm.
no, I haven't.
See, this is
All right.
you know. Mm, mm. No, I end it. That's the format. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching or listening. Say goodbye, Brad.
Goodbye, Brad.
Say farewell, Brandon.
Farewell, Brandon. Have a good night, everybody.
You smart
Thank
Alex.
you.
All right, I'm Joe signing off. Goodbye, everybody.